Hi there, guys. Just thought I would like to make a video explaining why I think indie rock guitar music in Britain is really struggling at the moment. And I'm kind of echoing James Hargreaves and the Britpop Buzzers channel uh, in really trying to get homegrown British roots indie guitar music uh, really back to where it belongs in the top 20. Obviously, shoegaze in the 2010s had an incredible revival, and it seemed to get pretty far. And that is due to the hard work of who you can see here, really, Shore Dive Records and Sonic Cathedral, and also Club AC30, who had like Exit Calm on there, uh, and there was a few others, Saint Marie Records. But despite the great work of what these guys do, it just isn't powerful enough to get guitar music back in the charts, and like it was in the 90s, 80s, and 90s. And obviously, the models changed, the formats changed. I mean, record labels they're not the middle ground anymore. That's the problem. There isn't a middle ground. When you think about 80s and 90s, you think of Creation Records, you think 4AD, you think Rough Trade, you think Factory, you think um, I mean, there's Warp Records in that, even though that's not guitar music, that was electronic side in Sheffield. You think Domino Records in the early 2000s, bringing Arctic Monkeys into the spotlight, and Wichita Records with which was like Dick Green, wasn't it, from Creation Records? He went on to form um, the same guy who formed Creation with Alan McGee and Joe Foster. He went on to form Wichita Records, and they signed Block Party. Silent Alarm with Helicopter and Banquet were just huge singles back in the early 2000s, weren't they? And I just think, really, to get back to those days, I think the reason why we can't really get back is because the problem with today's music is that there is no middle ground. You got the pop stars like your Taylor Swifts and your Adele's and Ed Sheeran's and stuff, and then you've got these small labels like Sonic Cathedral and Shore Dive, and there's no indie label that's powerful enough to offer a middle ground. Like they're just it's either like the indie bands, you got to dig them out on YouTube, or you got the massive pop stars up here. Whereas before in the 80s and 90s, Creation and 4AD managed to have these kind of they had these kind of moments where these bands you didn't expect to get far, they actually got up there with the pop stars. They had these little assaults and stuff in bursts, like Ride, Leave 'Em All Behind, 8 minute epic shoegaze song that actually got into the top 10, and it was higher than Michael Jackson's latest single at the time in '92. I mean, that was when alternative music really took over, and that's what I mean. Like, but today it's like no sort of indie rock guitar band can really. There's no middle ground where they're kind of on the edge of being commercial, like they're on the edge of being famous, but they're not too obscure. Whereas the 80s and 90s, indie bands were like here, and the pop artists were here, so they weren't that far behind. But now it's like the divide is like because of because the indie labels got bought up by like Sony, Creation got bought up like 50% in 1992. Alan McGee struck a deal with Sony, so it was like 49-51% split. So they were like major hybrid indie, and that was the beginning of the end, really, for independent rock. when you think, I mean, then he just wrapped it up in '99, and then I mean the majors just took over from there. Like, I mean, even in the Britpop era, like most of those Britpop bands were actually, like all of them pretty much were on a major. I mean, like Blur started off on Food Records. I think they were quite big. They were like a subsidiary of Virgin Records or something. Like, and then Huts. I know Huts were, um, but obviously like you had like Polydor and you had like Parlophone and stuff. A lot of the Britpop bands were on major labels like that. EMI, Radiohead were on EMI. Um, and they owed they own or still own Abbey Road. That's where the Benz was recorded. But my point is that um, when an indie label gets too big, they just get swallowed up by the majors. They get bought out. So it's a really fine balance. To The problem with today is that the roster of artists, we want them to have exposure, but if it's chart topping, if it's too much, then they'll just get swallowed up by the majors, or the artist would just move to a major label. Um, there's no middle ground where the label is like on the fringe of being a major, but still retaining that autonomy of being an independent label. It's like independent labels here now, whereas '80s and '90s they were here, and the pop artists are here. So the artists are here now, and the indie labels down here. They're not in the middle anymore, where it's like they get some exposure, but not too much that they sell out. Um, Obviously, there's debate about the word sell out, but you know, I think there's nothing wrong with selling out, but it's just, I don't know, man. I think people lose control. I think when when it's not independent, then you get songs written for you, and nothing's authentic anymore. Um, so yeah, we need guys you need to support guys like Sonic Cathedral and Shore Dive, Saint Marie Records. Um, I mean, like a guy, like people like a band like Pastel, like straight up indie kind of Britpop style band. I mean, they deserve lots of recognition. I mean, if it was the '80s and '90s, they would be bigger, and that is because you had those platforms like Creation and 4AD that really put them on the pedestal, where they could compete with the pop artists at the top and have that occasional number two and number one hit before, it used to like be a swaying motion where they were doing an assault on the pop artists and sneak in there where they shouldn't be, which is all part of the fun of it, like seeing the underdog kind of creeping in where they shouldn't be, like great gate crashing Michael Jackson, and we want to see someone gate crashing and Ed Sheeran, like this unexpected force just rising up before going into kind of middle obscurity. But these days, just the indie rock scene is just down here. It's just not getting that. And then, but if it does get bigger, then like I said, the majors just come in and swoop them up, or the label will just be bought out. So it's a really tough situation, and I think we need scions like Alan McGee and Ivor Watts Russell and Jeff Travis from Rough Trade. Those guys really like who kind of want to hold on to that sovereignty and just not sell their souls. Yeah, it's a hard one, guys, but I really appreciate like James Hargreaves' channel. I always follow it, and I like the Britpop Buzz. David W. Um, they're doing really great. They say a lot of interesting things about the state of indie guitar music and alternative rock. Um, especially on the British side of things. And I just wanted to weigh in there as well because obviously I'm a shoegazer first and foremost, but I really like Britpop, and I just like guitar music that's nothing too like menacing like metal or anything, but I like rock and roll, and I like stuff with great guitar tones and not too flamboyant and shreddy. But I just like indie in general, really. I mean, indie rock. Um, yeah, no matter if it's shoegaze, Britpop. I even like a bit of grunge, um, like the original grunge guys, like Alice in Chains and stuff like that. So yeah, it's not just shoegaze that I like. I like the whole scene. Like that's why I follow James Hargreaves' channel and Rick Beato. Like it just teaches you to open your mind, and yeah, I think this decade, like it's 30 years since the 90s, so I think we need to like normally things come round in every 30-year cycle, things come around again. So fingers crossed, fingers crossed. I think this should be the decade really where guitar music gets the odd top 10 hit and stuff. Because it would be nice for it to be in the public consciousness, not just um, not just like in a YouTube algorithm where it's just hidden underneath piles and piles of. It's just too saturated. That's the problem on these online things. It's too saturated, and it's really not really part of the public consciousness. It's not part of our culture anymore. That's why it needs to be big. So rock and roll music can be big again, and it's a really important thing about bringing people together and really just supplying great entertainment. It's just the wrong people are looking in the wrong places, and the wrong people are getting big. Um, I don't think a lot of these artists just aren't authentic musicians, and there's loads of good bands like Pastel and Flex Palace and that rising up, uh, the Raytons and stuff. Um, Road from Plymouth. I mean, like Rayton's really good. People like the Roads from Plymouth. I mean, like this is a great EP. The Roads, local Plymouth band. People like this, it'd be really good to see them actually making a salt on the charts and just be part of public consciousness instead of just fading into social media obscurity. Um, so yeah, that's my thoughts, guys. Yeah, that's what I've got to say, really. Yeah. Sorry, just reading some. Yeah, I'm seeing Mickey Bereni actually play in. She's playing in Devon in near Totnes, Dartington, New Line Brewery, and she's like promoting her book, which I've got actually on the shelf up there. Fingers crossed is the name of the book. Um, how music saved me from success. So that should be really good meeting her again because I met her at a Piroshka gig back in 2019. So it'd be good to meet her again. She hasn't quite got the red hair anymore. Um, and then I've got Slow Crush gig in Bristol next month, and Ride supporting Noel Gallagher in Taunton in August 2023. So that's quite a close one there, and it'd be really great to see Ride. That would be my seventh time seeing Ride, so that's incredible. Um, yeah, so got a good year, and yeah, thanks for listening. See you later, guys.